Chat Jeff.
All right, we are live. Oh, and looks like your audio is actually coming in, Noret. So let's go ahead and hop you on right now.
Cool.
So, everything on my computer is completely frozen right now except for Chrome in this program as I'm trying to close different programs out, and I'm like, don't mess up right before we go live. So welcome everyone that's in the chats. I see the chats have been going for quite a while, and welcome Noret, who has an amazing book coming out today, book 2 in the Legend of Randidly Ghosthound. So big congrats. I made that graphic way too small. It should be a little bit larger so you can actually see.
Ragged.
I've got one, and it's like, okay, that's about right. And then 2 is Photoshop did me wrong. It's a little small, but it looks awesome. It looks like, of course, I have not read book 2 yet. It's out today, and I foolishly used my Amazon credit for Audible on something else, not realizing. I was like, dang it, I could have this right now. So it looks like you've got some kind of undead back there in the back in this cover. Is that right? He kind of has a gray look to him.
Not undead, but something close to it. And this is sort of it's called a Forsaken. It's sort of one of the new plot lines in the rewrite to sort of like highlight a lot of the system elements that I fleshed out a lot later in the series, but like to add some seeds of that early on.
Very good. Very good. So let's get into book 1 just a little bit. I mean, I've listened to it twice now on Audible because it's like, you run out of credits, or like, I want to listen to something, and I listened to it again, seeing as book 2 was coming out. I loved it. I love the originality of it. There's something I think that's very different from other lit RPGs, and that's, in a good way, I feel claustrophobic in this book. Whereas other lit RPGs just like, oh, there's a huge world, let's go explore here, let's go left, let's go right, let's go forward. I feel enclosed, and even when he gets out of the dungeon, I feel like I don't want to, like, my mental capacity is like, don't go too far out there. It's dangerous. And I don't think there's a heaviness to that quite like other lit RPGs. I love the other lit RPGs, of course, the open world exploring and feeling like, let's explore this brave new world. This is like, let's stay close and just level up so I feel at least a little bit sane and safe. Was that intentional?
Well, yes, in a way, yes. I think especially when I started writing the first book, I really liked the system I had made, so I wanted to stay in one place and play around with it. Just to explore what paths and skills and soul skills, like what they could all do. And I mean, you even see that Randidly doesn't get a class for like a long time because I was still
spoilers. Part of me is wondering, is he ever going to get a class? Are Noret's fans going to be disappointed when he finally gives in and gets a class? Because your system, it's like, the suspended disbelief of it is necessary, but great. It's like he's found the exploit in the system, and it's like, I'm just going to start cooking to get more powerful. I'm going to start digging holes to get more powerful. And it's fun. I think it's, I kind of throw it back to Ender's Game. Ender's Game was great because you as the reader felt smart. And you as someone who would possibly thrive in these worlds, it's like, yes, I would sit down and I would grind my levels. So, but I think that a lot of lit RPG authors have taken inspiration from that too. It's like, I'm going to go system heavy for the book because of the joys of rewards in the system versus going, more and more character, more adventures and stuff like that. There's a concentration that more words are being spent on the system than proportionally is normal. And I think that Randidly might be the inspiration for some of that. I'm trying to think of other lit RPG authors. What are some of the lit RPG authors out there that you feel like you're a fan of, and you kind of like their systems as well? Since I can't get to my notes because my computer's frozen.
I mean, obviously, I am a big fan of sort of like the the original like foreign lit RPGs, because that's sort of how I got into the genre, like, you know, Legendary Moonlight Sculptor.
Legendary Moonlight Sculptor, yeah.
What was the other ones I was reading? And obviously now I really enjoy Defiance of the Fall and He Who Fights with Monsters. Like the other Aethon authors, they're like do excellent work.
Yeah, those, it's funny because you're hitting all the ones that I'm you know, over the past couple of months, those are the ones I've been hitting up and listening to. I'm very excited for Defiance of the Fall coming out soon.
Yeah.
But he's gonna have to wait because my next Amazon credit's going to Ghosthound too. You're gonna have to sit steady over there in the corner, and he doesn't have enough time for me to interview him. So hopefully we can get him on soon. But one that I found that I was super surprised at how much you look at a book cover and you're like, this is completely not like the book cover, but it's amazing. And then now I see the inspiration for the book cover. I love it. I love it now looking at the book cover with full appreciation. It's They Call Me Mad by J. Powell.
Yeah.
And he goes heavy into the upgrades, upgrade heavy. And I'm like, I love this. It's not lit RPG in the traditional sense of the system's just gonna give me something. Is like, I can be creative as a technomancer and just find stuff in my garage and create, you know, take my spud gun and turn it into a proton cannon of some sort. So
yeah, J. Powell's systems are really cool. Like he has a cool little what would you call him in Houndsman too, to the way he sort of earns things. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to call you out on something though. You're born and raised in America?
Yeah. Why
did you use the metric system? I mean, I was disheartened. I was like, is this a traitor to his country? Using the metric system? Although I did a word search and you used miles like 4 times, but it was in character. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is lit. He's got his American characters using the miles when they're speaking out loud, but then he's using metric system in Randidly's head. Explain that to me before my Texas spirit gets all up in a tizzy.
I don't have a good well, that's not true. I have a good explanation. It's just not very satisfying. It's just that a lot of the things that I was reading while writing it use the metric system, like, because all those translated novels are heavily in meters. But, you know, my brain growing up here, like, especially geographically, it was hard for me to, like, know how much distance a kilometer really is. Like, I've never moved in those units. Whereas, like, sort of, you know, track and field I did in high school, so I knew meters pretty well. And so, like, it's this weird overlap that, like, in close, I usually use meters, but when it gets further away, and especially when I'm describing, like, larger areas, like, it becomes more comfortable to use miles. And that's just how it ended up happening.
Yeah. For all you European and non-American viewers out there, we know that we're ridiculous when we're not using the metric system. And all of us pretty much, as we study the systems, are like, I wish I was taught metric system as a child. But that doesn't mean we're not going to be lazy and turn around and, you know, I'm not going to teach my son the metric system, because then I was going to be like, how many meters away is that, Dad? I'm like, I don't know. I feel like a dummy that doesn't know how to raise his son. Anyway, I just thought I'd rag on that one. There was one other point that made me bust out loud laughing in Randidly Ghosthound 1. It was in the later scenes. There was a point at which, you know, there's spears, and, you know, you have to describe spears in words like thrust. And there was a line that Randidly said he wished he was grinding something else. And immediately after, his phantom thrust goes up a level. And I was just like, this must be really tricky describing, you know, battle instead of, you know, sexual innuendos galore. It was just hilarious how they lined up back to back. Did you actually notice any of that in your writing?
I'll say I don't know. In the beginning, I didn't notice it as much, but like when I was releasing it as in the chapter format, like readers definitely started pointing it out, and so later I become a little bit more tongue in cheek with the phrasing of the things. But I try to keep it to like, I don't know, like one per like chapter or something, so it doesn't like detract too much.
It reminds me of football when they were overusing the word penetration. They were like, "Oh, he penetrated through the lines," and it's like I think they caught on eventually, and they're avoiding using the
Yeah,
words for answers and stuff like that. It's like that sounds. It's like the things that readers and authors don't think about that actually is a difficult thing to navigate as an author. I
yeah,
said I was going to poke fun of you a little bit this time because congratulations, you're in the top 100 is what I'm seeing all over the comments.
yeah. I saw
Uh,
really cool in the Kindle store. Yeah.
so big congratulations there. Um, so excellent. Yeah, people are be like, John's computer is frozen. It's like, yes. Uh, completely forgot. Let's see. Yeah, Retzi Bruno. Hey, boss, over there in the comments, talk about you being in the top 100. And then again, we have some of your biggest fans that have been checking in for hours, waiting for you to start.
Yeah.
So tell us, for the people that have not actually read Randidly one, can you give a non-spoilerly thing about what we're going to see in book 2?
Sure. Well,
Don't
relatively.
go spoilery. It's your book. You do what you want.
So,
Yeah.
I think, especially to put it broadly, Randidly 1 is about like acclimating to the system and then like trying to figure out what is happening on Earth now that there's magic and skills and monsters going and causing chaos. And Randidly 2, he is trying to like solve these problems that the monsters and the system is creating on Earth. And one of the things that he realizes that's the big mid portion of Randidly 2 is that he can't do everything on his own and he has to learn to rely on other people. And it sort of tries to like follow him as he leaves some problems up to the other people in the village he founded and go help Shao on another world.
Another world. Excellent. And do you feel like well, you've written so many freaking books in this system, and it's like I'm gonna be an old man, like sending my kids to college when you finally finish getting these books out. How much of a universe is this going to turn into? Is it going to stay concentrated on Earth, or is there going to be a lot of world travel in the future?
Like, are you all the way through? Like,
no, I'm going by release.
okay, so for the foreseeable future, it's mostly just Earth and this other world where the Shao, the sort of alien master he encounters in the dungeon,
Yeah.
his world. So it's for the longest time, it's just those two worlds.
Yeah. Now, in book 1, it did talk about how there's going to be an activated portal that opens to another world to get sort of that reinforcement stuff. So I assume there was going to be world travel.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got ones that literally feel like Defier. It feels like, it's a space system. It's like Star Trek lit RPG is the picture in my head, even though we haven't really left the world yet. Maybe one for like a mission. It's like now I'm starting to see this as a, go where no man has gone before space travel kind of thing. Versus, like I said, you've got that kind of not in a good way claustrophobic feel of concentrating on the here and now rather than on the possibilities and where it can be. So it's hard to picture going to other worlds and universes and getting that open feeling again. And I like it. The tension in Randidly is consistent.
For better or for worse, in some cases, I think it does eventually open up. But like for a lot of what we're reading now, like Randidly is struggling to like survive because the system wants to do its thing. And he's trying to sort of protect the Earth, and it's like a struggle.
Yeah. The other thing is you throw in these things like these trees, these dancing worship me trees, and it's like, holy crap, just as I thought things were like, moving on the positive, this is a really creepy power. It's like you start to think about it, it like drags your mind down again to the dangers and to we're exploring with things that we have no clue what we're doing. It's like, holy crap, has this tree abducted the mind of a little girl? And I didn't resolve in book 1, so I guess I'm going to find out some more in book 2. But again, I love it. You balance this dark feeling with the lit RPG elements very well. So
yeah, I try. I think realistic is the wrong term, but I sometimes I mean it goes with my mood as like a person, how like dark versus comedic, happy-go-lucky slice of life I want to do. But I try and like put in all of those things because that's what life is.
Yeah, we got Whale and Nether Knight and trying to help me out here in the comments. Arbor and Thorn. It's
Yeah.
like, thanks, guys. It's hard for me to remember names of anything and anything I read. It's like I read an entire series like 2 or 3 times through, and they're like, "What's the name of the main character?" And I'm like, "Well, I know the main character is this, but the guy I'm talking about is what was his name? He's literally like number 2, number 3 character." So that's fun. Uncle T. What are they talking about? Uncle T. Uncle T.
Spoiler. Uncle T is an alias that Thorn eventually goes by. If you remember the monstrous blood-sucking thorny vine creature, he like dresses himself up in a trench coat and like wanders around among people trying to hide, and he calls himself Uncle T during those times.
We have a wiki, Nether Knight says. So
True.
you're a big deal now. You got your wiki page. So, or is it this is like the wiki fandom page? Is there a wiki fan page for Randidly Ghosthound now?
Yeah. So yeah, it was for the longest time pretty well updated. I think it's a little less now. There got to be so much.
Yeah. Just book 1, and I'm like, I need a compendium.
Yeah.
More work for you. Yay. So I think last time we talked, and you're like 12, 13 books in, planned 15, 16 books. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while.
So I just wrote, or I'm writing today, like chapter 1996, and it ends up being like, I don't know, 100 chapters per book. So if I release them all, it'll be like 20 books, and I'll probably maybe release not 2 more. 2200 is currently my chapter goal to finish and be done. Washing my hands. Of course, this is the running joke between my friend who was the inspiration for the name Randidly Ghosthound, is that Randidly Ghosthound is a prequel to an even longer series, which imagine, yeah.
Hey, I mean, if you've got this consistent of fandom this far into your books, it's got to be doing well. I mean, there's we were talking about the other day about how popular audiobooks are, and I'm thinking that the length of your books has lended some new types of new reach and new fandom in Audible, especially amongst lit RPG fans, because when a lit RPG, it seems to be the situation when I use my credit, I'm like, it's only 10 hours, it's only 12 hours.
Yeah.
A good size, as a normal size. And then I look at Randidly 20, 24 hours. I'm like, no, that's a good use of a credit right there. And then Defier doing something similar. It's like you've kind of created a new trend, and some authors might start getting mad at you. Well, I'm looking at my book, and I'm like, okay, I'm 80,000 in. I'm not halfway yet. Whereas other authors are like, 96,000, 100,000 done. And I'm like, 80,000, I got a long way to go. But it changes the mindset of what it is to write a book for certain genres. How do you feel about that pressure?
Well, I would say that this isn't even my fault. This is like me reading Gene Wolfe when I was, a teenager, and just like picking up the big omnibus and being like, yes, this is what I want to read. Like the Dragonlance things, these thick 600-page books, or I would see that a first book of a series came out, and I'm like, oh man, a single book in a series. I don't want to get to the end of that and have to wait till the next one. And I would just find these old finished series, like I ripped through. Man, I'm blanking on old fantasy authors, like Terry
Brooks, and
like the long series that like I could just
Wheel of Time. It's a thing. It's interesting, but we're looking at the writing styles back then. And Steve, when I'm talking to Steve about it, he says back then you're looking at paid per word.
Yeah.
So you get lots of filler. You're not doing that. You're not filling for words. You literally have a story to tell, and the story just keeps being told, because I guess we've kind of mastered not mastered, but I mean, the culture and the writers have found it's like people like to dig into the character more. And then you have a whole thing with Lit RPG where the system is a character, the system is a world, the system is basically an element of a book. That you don't just describe the world, you don't just describe the settings, you don't just describe your enemies and your main characters and the relationships. You describe a relationship with a system, which is a third of the book, which is phenomenal. So, and interesting. It's like we've added another element to the system, and it is interesting, and it's making things easier. I'd say it makes things easier for an author. So, as long as they can get their system written correctly.
Because I think, everybody would love if like their relationship with life was easy to understand. Like if they could see levels, they'd be like, I'm getting better at this, or I'm not so good at this. And I think there's like, I don't know, something cathartic to like exist in a fantasy world where all the complexities of like living are sort of like delineated. And then of course it becomes almost equally satisfying, or not satisfying, but like real to have then interpersonal strife or whatever, or threats that like you can't quantify in the same way. But like keeping a balance between the system, what the system can tell you and what can't tell you, is I think like an important decision for lit RPG authors.
Yeah. So the pacing of a book for aspiring authors, there's been I always like to do a section where it's like aspiring authors, what's some author advice you would give them? In the lit RPG, there's a lot of jump into the system instantly, immediately, and engage the system immediately. And I find myself not necessarily enjoying that. It's like maybe leave some stuff going before, but I also at the same time I really enjoy it because I very much care about the system. And you did it right off the bat, danger instantly, and it's amazing. But is that necessary? People say the old thing used to be, you need to get your reader engaged within the first paragraph or two paragraphs. But I've seen both ways. What's your thoughts on that for aspiring authors?
So first, I would say like it depends on your medium. Because I originally came up through serialization on Railroad, just like chapter by chapter, and so I think in that instance, it's very important that your reader, maybe to the detriment of, I don't know, like a more discerning reader, but like that there's a certain kind of reader that wants to know immediately what sort of story they're getting into, and showing the system, like revealing your hand, is a good way to be like, okay, this is the sort of world that I'm getting into. But I think like if you want to publish online or more novelization, like I definitely think it's important to like take a little bit of extra time to like set up a character as a touchstone, so then we can follow that character like through their interactions with the system. Because if you like you were saying earlier, the system becomes a character, but it's not your main character, or it shouldn't be your main character. Like your main character should be what everybody's invested in. And so I think, I mean, this is a long way of saying like it depends, but I think like keeping everything tight and fun and exciting, because I think one of my pet opinions about lit RPG is that In like novels, usually we're talking about tension, but for lit RPG, it's all about anticipation and excitement, and that's why, as a genre, it's sort of hard to get into because it relies on a lot of the readers understanding your references. So, like when I hint about a class coming, they can be excited about it because they're like, "Oh, I've seen classes and other things. I wonder what's going to happen in this particular thing," because a lot of the joy of great lit RPG is like you're told what's coming and it still surprises you because it's like different and unique to this world in like an excellent way. And I think that's why Shirtaloon, He Who Fights with Monsters, does it so well, is because he's really, really good at like, this is what's coming, but like it sort of comes together in like a really organic way.
Interesting. I find myself doing exactly what you just said. Was I'm going back to my book and seeding anticipation, which I have to do because it's not a jump straight into the system.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who gets his class, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my idea and my hook. A guy becomes a wizard because he's 30 years old and a virgin, but he's also highly intelligent. But he's kind of got this laser focus on his job, and he's like, I'm an adult, I don't have time for these side quests.
Magic.
But then I had to find myself putting on news reports where someone went through downtown and threw balls of ice through every single window. Police are perplexed as to how this happened, and then it's like pets are disappearing, and it's a slow implementation of the system. It's almost secretly slowly building. And as you were just saying, potentially to the detriment of the book, how fast you have to jump into it, I had to take away my entire prelude and make it a chapter 6. So it's like now I have to say 2 days prior at chapter 6, and that annoys me, but I feel like I have to do it so that people can see, what's going on and why this is happening and why it's happening slowly rolled out. Anyway, it's frustrating, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the anticipation. If you can give them little bite-sized pieces of foreshadowing of what's about to happen, it's good. So yeah, excellent advice. So anyone in the comment section that has questions, you can roll out those questions now or whenever. If you have any questions from Noret, of course, I think you communicate very well with your fan base, so I doubt there's going to be anything they haven't already had the time to ask. So
I like to ask the same questions over and over again. Specifically in regards to The Great Tower, the first story I wrote on Royal Road.
I have not read that one yet.
Don't get started about it.
How did you get the name Telus?
That's an interesting question that I don't really know the answer to, just because it happened so long ago. I will say, in terms of naming, I'm always very careful. I mean, because my first name's Noret, I'm always very careful to like make names aside from Randidly, which is a separate thing. But I always want to make names that sort of sound like names but aren't usual names. And so like things like Telus, like Shal, Helen is tragically a normal name. There's a lot of normal names for the people on Earth, but like I try to be very careful because I don't know. Some of the other lit RPG that was coming out right when I started had very normal names, and it took me, because I was so used to reading the translated things where they would have like ridiculous names, and then like when I would read a normal named person going through and like having all this happen to them, I'm like, this isn't believable at all. Like I want something weird.
I wonder if the main female in my book's name is Ridley, and I was wondering if I had recently read Randidly when I started it, or when I was changing the name. Actually, I had started this in March, and I didn't get to listen to Randidly until it was actually released. But March of last year, I was going through changing the names. I was like, Ridley's a good name, and it's not a normally used name.
Yeah.
I'm like, Randidly, Ridley. Did I do that? So, all right, let's see. How are you enjoying your break novel, and how many towers in book 2? I have no clue what that's referring to, but
that's Whale talking about The Great Tower. The break novel is excellent. So close to being done. I gave him like a date that I would start The Great Tower again. I think it's April 1st, 2024. Is the so I just have to finish then. Hopefully, I'll be safely finished before then.
How much would you say is new in this book?
So I think there is actually a lot of early restructuring for those who went through the original serialization. Like Lyra's character arc is almost entirely rewritten, and like a lot of the stuff against the Donington's tribulation is new and expanded to sort of give more context to Randidly going to Telus. And then the like a lot of world building went into the second part of the book in Telus, and then the fight at the end is pretty well retooled and remade.
So I'm just over 80,000 words into my book, and I've gone back into my book 3 times and just gone through reading it and adding things here and there. 20 books worth of material in. How many times have you gone back and restructured? And then when you finally, go to publishing, you actually change an entire. How did that feel? For me, it feels good when I get to redo something in my book, but mine has not been released yet. How does that feel?
Yeah, it was a pretty good feeling, especially to like polish up, because early on I was just writing as fast as I could, and like taking away a few things. There was a skill in particular that I wrote at the beginning that I eventually just stopped mentioning because I was like, this is such a hassle and I don't want to deal with it anymore. And like just taking that out was nice. Because I release, I write in the morning, usually edit in the evening, and then post. Like a lot of things I don't get to go back and change, and sometimes I'm like, I could have done this better, but you just soldier forward as best you can.
Very good, very good. I understand that. I was like, this is going to get harder and harder to write as I go on, so just delete. Let's see. How did you come up with both the idea of paths and brainstorming what they did?
So I mean, this is like why I really liked my system. I want things to be tied together, and it was just like the most efficient way. So I've gone through a lot of different systems. I have like in my drive, I have like I label them light novels, and Randidly is System Apocalypse or Game Apocalypse, which is my light novel 7. So I had like Great Tower, I think, is 5. I had a bunch of like systems and ideas before this one, and I like kept trying to figure out how I could tie growth more tightly together. And so paths ended up being the way that like you get skill levels, which gives you points, which lets you complete paths, which give you skills, which you can then gain skill levels, and like in this constant loop.
Yeah, I think I really do enjoy your system. I think it is unique enough, but familiar enough that people won't get lost in what you're talking about. As just gain a skill and you can use those on your path points. It was a simple enough idea, but it was very unique. It's like, how would I have come up with that system? I couldn't have. That's why I didn't write your book. But I find inspiration for myself. It's like how, like the point of a book, it seems I'm going for overpowered, is to make your system and then either optimize or break that system in order to get more powerful. I found the path forward, but that's through lots of help and inspiration. But then at the same time, you're like, I want to be unique enough. People aren't going to be like, oh, you stole that from Defire, you stole that from Randidly, which it's nothing like it, fortunately. But at the same time, it makes it all the harder that I'm not just ripping you off. So let's see. How is the second book doing on Kindle Unlimited? I could look up that information, but my computer is frozen. just on the screen. I am very fortunate in how it froze. So, but I'm assuming it's doing very well.
And it's hard to, like, it doesn't update super frequently, so it probably hasn't jumped up again yet since the 70 in Kindle Store.
Would you have a Randidly cameo in Great Tower?
No. Although I was like, possibly, but I mean, I if I did go back and write more Great Tower, I probably could bury some Easter eggs. I'll think about it.
You'll think about it. Has the name of the second spear attendant been revealed yet?
So I think you know his name starts with R-O, and I think he like tries to say it several times. But I've been going through and like doing the edits for book 3, and book 3 is the big epic scene with him, and I really want to like polish that up and make it like extra cool because it is like a really cool scene.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. I'm sure I had other questions, but they're on, my note page that I can't get to right now. So,
frozen.
So normally I, try and limit these interviews to around 20 minutes, but I thought your fans deserved more, so I doubled stealing your time. But we are all very excited for how well already Book 2 is doing. 12, 13 hours into its release. So
yeah,
I am looking forward to getting a listen. I might have to wait a while, or I might have to look for a deal on some credits. And so thank you so much for joining us. And there's, potentially 18 more of these book release interviews to go. So we'll look forward to stealing more of your time at a later date. So thanks everyone in the comments section and the live viewers and the hundreds of viewers to come. And thank you for your support. And thank you so much, Noret, for writing these books for us.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody who came here. Yes.
Yes. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.